Are you waiting for someone?" The girl looked up at him from the metal bench. She was small. 11, maybe 12. Her hands were resting on a large black garbage bag that sat beside her like a second passenger. "I'm always waiting for someone," she said. "That's what foster kids do." Marcus Hale stood there, his phone still in his hand, the tow truck number half dialed. He looked at the bag. Black plastic, stretched tight at the corners. He knew that bag. He knew exactly what it meant. "How many homes have you been in?" he asked. She didn't look away. 7, she said. "But I stopped counting after 5. She paused. "After 5, you stop unpacking." Marcus did not move. He did not finish dialing. He just stood there on the sidewalk, looking at a girl who carried everything she owned in a garbage bag, and felt something crack open inside his chest that he had spent 42 years keeping shut. The bus stop sat on the edge of a 2-lane road outside a small city in the American South. It was the kind of stop that time had forgotten. A metal bench with peeling green paint. A plastic shelter with one panel missing. No digital screen. No route map. Just a faded sign that said the next bus would come when it came. The late afternoon sun was dropping low behind the trees, turning everything gold and long-shadowed. The air smelled like warm asphalt and cut grass from a yard somewhere nearby. 50 meters down the road, a black luxury sedan sat on the shoulder with its hazard lights blinking. The hood was up. The engine was quiet. Marcus Hale stood beside it, his phone pressed to his ear, listening to a recorded message tell him that the tow company would arrive in approximately 45 minutes. Marcus Hale was not a man who waited. He had a driver. He had an assistant. He had people whose entire job was to make sure he never stood on the side of a road wondering what to do next. But today, his assistant was on leave. Today, he had driven himself back from a meeting in a neighboring town. And today, his car had decided to stop working on a stretch of road he had never noticed before. For the first time in years, Marcus Hale was just a man standing on a sidewalk. He put his phone in his pocket and looked around. That was when he saw the girl. She was sitting on the metal bench at the bus stop. Small, thin. Her legs didn't quite reach the ground, so her feet hung slightly above the concrete. Beside her on the bench sat a large black garbage bag stuffed full and tied at the top. Not a backpack, not a suitcase, a garbage bag. Marcus looked at that bag and something moved inside his chest. Something old. Something he thought he had buried a long time ago. He walked over slowly. He noticed things as he got closer. Her shoes were old, but the laces were tied carefully, double-knotted the way someone does when they know they might have to walk a long distance. Her hair was braided in neat rows, tight and even, but there were small imperfections at the back where her own hands couldn't reach. Nobody had helped her. She had done it alone in a mirror. Her jacket was 2 sizes too big. The sleeves were rolled up at the wrists. The zipper pull was missing, replaced with a paperclip. Marcus sat down on the bench beside her, not too close, but close enough that she knew he was there. For a moment neither of them spoke. "That's a big bag," he said. "It's everything I have," she said. She said it the way someone would say the sky is blue. No sadness, no complaint, just a fact. "Where are you headed?" Marcus asked. "New house," she said. "New family. Number 8, I guess." She looked straight ahead when she said it. Not at him. Not at the road. Just forward the way people look when they have learned not to expect anything from any direction. Marcus Hale had built shopping centers, apartment towers, and office buildings across 3 states. He had negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He had sat across from governors and board members and bankers without flinching. But sitting on a metal bench, next to an 11-year-old girl with a garbage bag, he felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt like he was 10 years old again. She did not know why the man beside her had gone quiet. She did not know why his hands had stopped moving. She did not know that the man in the gray vest and leather shoes was looking at her garbage bag and seeing his own reflection in the black plastic, a reflection from 42 years ago that he had spent his entire life trying to forget. Zara kept her eyes forward. She had learned a long time ago that adults sometimes went quiet for reasons that had nothing to do with her, so she waited. The way she always waited, with her hands on the bag and her feet above the ground. The sun dropped a little lower. The shadows stretched a little longer, and 2 strangers sat on a bench at a bus stop, one at the beginning of her story and one who thought he had finished his, not knowing yet that this ordinary afternoon was about to change both of their lives. Marcus Hale did not know her name yet. He did not know where she had been or where she was going, but he knew the bag. He knew exactly what it meant to carry your entire life in something that was designed to be thrown away. And that knowing was the thing he could not walk away from. She was the first to speak again. "You're staring at my bag," she said. "I'm sorry," he said. "It's okay," she said. "Everybody stares. They just don't sit down." Zara pulled the bag a little closer. Marcus noticed the way her fingers gripped the plastic. Not with fear, with practice. The grip of someone who had learned that if you set something down, it might not be there when you came back. "You pack fast when you've done it enough times," she said quietly, as if answering a question he hadn't asked yet. Marcus turned to look at her. "How fast?" 30 minutes, she said. "That's what they give you. Sometimes less." The social worker shows up and says, "Pack your things." "So you learn what matters. Toothbrush, socks, the book Mrs. Johnson gave me in home number 3. She paused. "That's it. Everything else you leave behind." Marcus said nothing. He just listened. "The first family was nice," Zara continued. "They just had their own baby and didn't need me anymore. The second family moved to another state. I couldn't go with them. Something about paperwork." She spoke evenly, like she was reading items off a list. "The third one said I was too quiet. The fourth one said I was too much." She stopped for a moment. Then she said the fifth one was the longest. Almost a year. "I thought maybe that one would be real." "What happened?" Marcus asked. "The dad got a new job. They said they couldn't handle a foster child and a new schedule at the same time." She shrugged slightly. "After that, I stopped unpacking." "Did any of them say goodbye?" Marcus asked. Zara thought about that. Not quickly. She actually thought about it the way someone flips through old photographs in their mind. "Number 2 did," she said. She cried. "Number 5 left a note on my pillow, said she was sorry and that I deserved better." She paused again. "The rest just stopped being there. One day the house was home. The next day it wasn't." Marcus looked at the girl. 11 years old. 7 homes. And she spoke about it the way a soldier talks about old battles. Not with anger. Not with tears. Just with the flatness of someone who has learned that feelings slow you down when you need to move fast. "Mama Grace used to say something about that," Zara said. "Who is Mama Grace?" Marcus asked. "My grandmother," Zara said. "She raised me before I went into the system. She passed when I was 6. "What did she say?" "She said, if people leave, it doesn't mean you're not worth staying for. It means they weren't strong enough to stay." Marcus was quiet for a long time after she said that. He looked at the girl and saw something that most people missed. She was not broken. She was careful. There was a difference. Broken people stopped trying. Careful people had simply learned that trying came with a cost. The girl didn't know it, but she was sitting in the same kind of seat Marcus Hale had sat in 42 years ago. Not the same bench, not the same city, but the same kind of waiting, the same kind of bag, the same kind of silence that fills the space when a child realizes that nobody is coming and the only thing left to do is sit still and hope the world remembers you exist. Marcus looked at the road ahead, but he was no longer seeing it. He was seeing Memphis. Summer of 1982. He was 10 years old, sitting at a bus stop on the east side of the city with a black garbage bag between his knees. The 4th foster family had called the agency that morning. They said he was difficult. He was not difficult. He was afraid. But afraid and difficult looked the same to people who didn't want to look closely. The social worker was supposed to come at noon. It was now 2 in the afternoon. Marcus sat there watching buses pull up and pull away, pull up and pull away. He didn't get on any of them. He didn't have a ticket. He didn't know where to go. So he just sat. The sun was hot. His shirt was sticking to his back. His mouth was dry because the last family had told him to leave his water bottle since they had bought it. At some point, an older woman sat down on the bench beside him. She was black, maybe 60 or 65, wearing a cotton dress and carrying a brown paper bag. She didn't look at him right away. She just sat. After a few minutes, she opened the paper bag and took out half a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. She placed it on the bench between them. "In case you're hungry," she said. She didn't ask why he was there. She didn't ask about the bag. She didn't look at him with pity or concern, or the expression adults make when they see a child alone and want to feel better about noticing. She just opened a small Bible from her purse and started reading. Quietly, like nothing unusual was happening. Like sitting next to a boy with a garbage bag was the most normal thing in the world. Marcus picked up the sandwich. He ate it slowly. It was peanut butter and jelly on white bread. It was the first food he had eaten in 14 hours. He never forgot the taste. They sat together for almost an hour. She read. He ate. Neither of them spoke again until the social worker's car finally pulled up. Marcus stood and picked up his bag. The woman looked up from her Bible. "Whatever they tell you about yourself," she said, "don't believe all of it. Most of it is about them, not you." That was it. No lecture, no prayer, no long speech about staying strong. Just one sentence that landed somewhere deep inside a 10-year-old boy and never left. He never saw her again. He didn't know her full name. He only knew what the bus driver had called her once when she got on. Mrs. Odell. 42 years later, Marcus Hale still remembered the taste of that sandwich. He still remembered the way the wax paper crinkled. He still remembered the weight of her words, which had somehow become the foundation under everything he built after that. Marcus looked at Zara. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She nodded. "You said you stopped unpacking after home number 5. What made you stop?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Because I realized unpacking means you think you're staying, and thinking you're staying is the part that hurts the most." Marcus understood that sentence in a way that went deeper than words. He had spent his entire adult life unpacking, building, investing, acquiring, filling rooms with expensive furniture and filling calendars with important meetings, buying houses with more bedrooms than he would ever use. And now, sitting at a bus stop, he wondered if all that unpacking had been his way of proving to himself that he was finally staying somewhere, that nobody could move him again, that no social worker would ever knock on his door and say, "Pack your things." He looked at the garbage bag between them and felt the distance between who he was now and who he had been collapse into nothing. 42 years, billions of dollars, hundreds of buildings, and here he was, sitting next to a version of himself he thought he had left behind. The same bench, the same bag, the same silence. A car pulled up to the curb. An older sedan gray with a small dent on the rear bumper. The kind of car that had been to too many places and carried too many people and never got fixed because there was never enough time or money to fix it. A woman stepped out. Mid-40s. She wore a dark blazer over a wrinkled blouse. Her hair was pulled back but coming loose at the sides. She carried a folder under one arm and she moved quickly, the way people move when they are already late for the next thing. "Zara," she said as she approached the bench. "I'm sorry I'm late. Traffic on the bridge." The girl stood up without saying anything. Like she had been expecting this. Like she had done this before. "I'm Linda," the woman said, more to Marcus than to Zara because Zara already knew. Linda was her social worker. The voice on the phone. The person who called when it was time to move again. Linda looked at Marcus. She scanned him quickly. The vest, the shoes, the luxury car with hazard lights blinking down the road. She softened her voice slightly but kept it professional. "Thank you for keeping her company, sir," she said. "We'll take it from here." Marcus stood up slowly. "I was just talking with her," he said. Linda nodded. She opened the folder and glanced at a form checking something. Then she looked at Zara. "Do you have all your things?" Zara looked at the garbage bag. "Yes." Linda did not comment on the bag. She had seen too many bags like it. Her eyes moved past it the way a paramedic's eyes move past blood. Not because she didn't care, because caring every time would break her. Marcus stepped forward slightly. "Where is she going?" he asked. Linda hesitated. "I can't share that information." "Privacy policy? Is it a good home?" Marcus asked. Linda looked at him for a long time, the kind of look that said she wanted to answer honestly, but knew that honesty and her job didn't always fit in the same sentence. "It's an available home," she said. Marcus heard that word. Available. Not good. Not loving. Not safe. Not right. Available. A home that had space. A bed that was empty. A family that had agreed to take one more child because the system needed one more place to put a child. Available. That word sat in his chest like a stone. Zara picked up the garbage bag. She lifted it with both hands the way someone lifts something heavy that they've carried too many times to complain about. She walked toward the car. Then she stopped. She turned back and looked at Marcus. "Thank you for sitting with me," she said. "Most people don't." Marcus looked at her. Most people don't know what that bag means. Zara studied his face. Not the way a child looks at an adult, the way one survivor looks at another. You had one too, she said quietly. Didn't you? Marcus did not answer, but his face answered for him. Something shifted behind his eyes. Something cracked open just slightly, just enough for the girl to see what was behind it. Zara nodded slowly, like she understood. Then she turned and walked to the car. Linda opened the back door. Zara put the garbage bag on the seat first, then climbed in beside it. She pulled the seatbelt across her chest. The door closed. The engine started. The car pulled away from the curb and merged onto the road, heading somewhere that Zara had never been, to stay with people she had never met, in a house she would probably never unpack in. Marcus watched the car until it disappeared around a bend in the road. Then he stood there for a while longer, looking at the empty bench. If this story has touched you so far, please take a moment to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you are watching from, because every story matters. And subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Marcus Hale stood at the bus stop for another 10 minutes after the car disappeared. He could have called his assistant. He could have checked on the tow truck. He could have opened his laptop and answered the 47 emails waiting in his inbox. Instead, he just stood there, looking at the bench, looking at the place where the garbage bag had been, looking at the empty space next to where he had been sitting. He had met thousands of people in his life: business partners, investors, politicians, employees, reporters, strangers at conferences and galas and charity events. He had shaken hands with people whose names he forgot before the handshake was over. But this girl with the garbage bag and the careful voice and the grandmother named Mama Grace, this girl who had stopped unpacking because hoping hurt more than moving. Marcus realized something that made the late afternoon light feel very different. The girl in that car was carrying the same bag he had carried 42 years ago. She was sitting in the same back seat. She was heading to the same kind of house. And he, Marcus Hale, the man who had built an empire because a stranger once gave him half a sandwich and told him not to believe everything people said about him, had just watched her drive away. And he had done nothing. The tow truck came an hour later. Marcus barely noticed. He sat in the back of his own car while they hooked it up, staring out the window at the empty bench. When they dropped him and the car at his house, he thanked the driver without looking at him and walked inside. The house was large. That was the first thing anyone ever said about it. 6,000 square feet of stone and glass set back from the road behind a row of oak trees. The driveway was long and curved. The front door was solid wood, heavy, the kind of door that made a sound when it closed, like it was sealing something shut. Inside, everything was clean. Everything was placed. The furniture was expensive and carefully chosen. The art on the walls had been selected by a decorator his wife had hired years ago. The floors were dark hardwood, polished so well that Marcus could see his own reflection when he walked across them. But the house was quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Empty quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when a large space has too few people in it for too many years. Marcus's wife Claire had passed away 3 years earlier. Cancer. The kind that moves slowly at first and then all at once. They had been married for 21 years. They had tried to have children. They could not. And when Claire suggested adoption, Marcus had said no. He told her the truth, or at least the version of the truth he could say out loud. I don't know how to be a father. Nobody taught me. I don't have a model for it. I wouldn't know what to do. Claire had looked at him for a long time after he said that. She didn't argue. She just nodded and never brought it up again. And Marcus had told himself that was the right decision. That some things are better left alone. That not every empty room needs to be filled. Now he lived in the house alone. 7 bedrooms, 1 person. Mrs. Patterson had dinner ready when he walked in. She was a black woman in her early 60s who had worked in the house for 15 years. She had outlasted 3 housekeepers, 2 assistants, and 1 marriage. She ran the kitchen. She ran the laundry. She ran the schedule of maintenance workers and deliveries and repairs. But mostly she ran Marcus. Gently, quietly, the way someone manages a person who does not know they need managing. She set a plate on the dining table. The table seated 8. Marcus sat in the same chair he always sat in, the one at the end. The other 7 chairs were empty. He picked up his fork but did not eat. He just looked at the plate. Mrs. Patterson watched him from the kitchen doorway. "You're quiet tonight," she said. "More quiet than usual." "I met someone today," Marcus said. "A business partner, an 11-year-old girl at a bus stop." Mrs. Patterson walked slowly into the dining room and stood near the table. She didn't sit down. She never sat at the table, but she stood close enough to listen the way she always did, like a woman who had learned that sometimes the most important conversations happen when someone is pretending to eat. Marcus told her about Zara, about the garbage bag, about the 7 homes, about the way she spoke flat and practical like a child who had learned to describe pain the way other people describe weather. He told her about the social worker, about the word available, about the moment the car pulled away and he stood there doing nothing. When he finished, Mrs. Patterson was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "And you let her go." It was not a question. It was not an accusation. It was something in between. The kind of sentence that lands softly but cuts deep. "What was I supposed to do?" Marcus said. "I'm a stranger." Mrs. Patterson looked at him the way she sometimes looked at him when he said something that was true but not honest. "You were also a child once," she said, "who waited for a stranger to do something." Marcus put his fork down. He did not pick it up again. Mrs. Patterson cleared the plate a few minutes later without saying another word. She turned off the kitchen light and said good night the way she always did. Calm, simple, like the world was still turning the way it was supposed to. Marcus went upstairs. He brushed his teeth. He changed his clothes. He lay down in his bed in his bedroom, the largest of the 7. The sheets were clean. The pillows were soft. The room was temperature-controlled and perfectly dark. And he could not sleep, because all he could think about was a number. 7. 7 bedrooms in this house, and every one of them empty. 7 foster homes that girl had lived in, and every one of them temporary. The same number, the same emptiness. Just dressed in different clothes. That night, Marcus Hale lay in bed in a house with 7 bedrooms and thought about a girl who had been in 7 homes. And he could not sleep. The next morning, Marcus Hale did something he had not done in 20 years. He made a phone call that had nothing to do with money. He sat in his home office with a cup of coffee that had gone cold and dialed the number for David Chen. David was his personal attorney. They had known each other for 2 decades. David had handled every major deal, every contract, every legal decision Marcus had ever made. He was sharp, careful, and patient, the kind of lawyer who never asked unnecessary questions but always noticed when something was wrong. David answered on the second ring. "It's 7 in the morning, Marcus. Either you're buying something or you're in trouble." "Neither," Marcus said. "I need you to find a child." There was a pause. "I need you to find a girl," Marcus continued. "She's in the foster care system. Her name is Zara. I don't have a last name. She was at a bus stop on Route 12 yesterday afternoon around 5 o'clock. A social worker named Linda picked her up in a gray sedan." David was quiet for a moment. "Marcus, finding a specific child in the foster system is not simple. There are privacy laws, sealed records, federal protections." "I know," Marcus said. "That's why I'm calling a lawyer and not Google." "Why do you want to find her?" David asked. Marcus looked out the window of his office. The oak trees in the yard were swaying slightly in the morning breeze. He could see the long driveway, the empty front gate, the road beyond it that led to a bus stop where a girl had been sitting with everything she owned in a garbage bag. He was quiet for a long time. "Because I was that kid David," he said. 42 years ago. And no one came looking for me." David did not respond right away. In 20 years of knowing Marcus, of reviewing his finances, of sitting across from him in boardrooms and courtrooms, David had never heard Marcus mention his childhood. Not once. He knew Marcus was self-made. Everyone knew that. It was part of the legend. The man who came from nothing. But the specifics of that nothing had always been sealed behind a wall that Marcus never opened. Until now. "I didn't know that," David said quietly. "Nobody does," Marcus replied. Claire knew. That's it. David was silent for another moment. Then he said, "All right, I'll see what I can find. But Marcus, even if we locate her, you can't just take a child. The system doesn't work that way. There are procedures. Background checks, home studies, court hearings. It takes months, sometimes longer." "I didn't build my company by following the easy path," Marcus said. I built it by following the right one. David paused again. Then he said, give me a day. He called back that evening. Marcus answered before the first ring finished. I found her, David said. Zara Williams, age 11, currently placed with a family called the Brennans. They live about 40 minutes outside the city. Tell me about the family, Marcus said. They're licensed foster parents, no criminal record, no complaints on file. But here's the thing, Marcus. They currently have 4 foster children in the home. 4, Marcus repeated. 4, David confirmed. And from what I can see, Mrs. Brennan is the primary caregiver. Her husband works long hours. The house is modest, 2 bedrooms for the children. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. So Zara is in a house with 3 other children, 1 adult most of the time, and not enough space, he said. That's accurate, David said. It's not dangerous, it's not abusive, but it's stretched thin. Very thin. Marcus nodded slowly, even though David couldn't see him. What do I need to do? Marcus asked. If you're serious, David said, the first step is to contact the Department of Children and Family Services. You would need to apply as a foster parent. That means paperwork, training, a home study, and eventually a court hearing. How long? 3 to 6 months? Maybe longer? Marcus looked at his office. The awards on the shelf. The framed magazine covers. The view of the garden through the tall window. Start it, he said. David hung up and Marcus sat in his office looking at the phone. He had made thousands of business calls in this room, calls that moved millions of dollars, calls that built buildings and closed deals and changed markets. But the call he had just made felt heavier than all of them combined. The next afternoon, Marcus drove out to the Brennans' neighborhood. He did not go to the house. He did not knock on the door. He parked on the opposite side of the street, 2 houses down, and sat in his car. The house was small, 1 story. White siding with a few boards coming loose near the bottom. The yard was narrow but not unkept. There was a chain-link fence around the back. Inside the fence, 3 children were playing. 2 boys chasing each other with sticks, a younger girl sitting in a plastic sandbox, and on the back step, sitting by herself with a notebook on her knees, was Zara. She was drawing. Her head was down. Her hand moved slowly across the page. She did not look up at the other children. She did not call out to them. She just sat on the step with her notebook the same way she had sat on the bench at the bus stop. Quiet. Still. Separate. Mrs. Brennan came to the back door. She was maybe 45, wearing a faded t-shirt and jeans, her hair pulled back. She looked tired. Not angry. Not cold. Just tired the way someone looks when they are doing more than one person should have to do. Kids, come inside, she called. Dinner. The 3 children ran toward the door. Zara stood up slowly, closed her notebook, and followed them inside. She was the last one through the door. Mrs. Brennan did not look at the notebook. She did not ask what Zara was drawing. She just held the door open and then closed it behind her. Marcus picked up his phone and called David. I've seen the house, he said. She's safe. But she's not seen. What do you mean? David asked. I mean, she's a number in a system, Marcus said. She sits on a step with a notebook and nobody asks what she's drawing. Marcus remembered something then. His 3rd foster home. A house in a neighborhood that looked a lot like this one. He used to sit on the back step after school with a notebook he had found in a dumpster behind a drugstore. The pages were wrinkled and some of them had water stains, but they were blank. And Marcus would draw buildings, tall buildings. Buildings with big windows and wide doors and lobbies made of marble. Nobody asked him what he was drawing. Nobody looked at the notebook. It sat beside his bed for 3 years until the day he moved again and left it behind because there wasn't room in the garbage bag. 42 years later, those buildings existed. Real buildings made of steel and glass and stone. Shopping centers in 3 states. An office tower downtown. Apartment complexes where thousands of people lived. An empire that started as pencil lines in a water-stained notebook that nobody ever looked at. Marcus looked at Zara sitting on the step drawing in her notebook and thought something he could not shake. That girl is building something. She just doesn't know it yet, and no one around her can see it. 3 days later, Marcus Hale walked into the Department of Children and Family Services. He wore a plain navy sweater and khakis. No tie, no cufflinks. He had thought carefully about what to wear, which was something he almost never did. In business, he wore what power looked like. Today, He wanted to look like what steady looked like. The building was old. Government old. Fluorescent lights, linoleum floors, plastic chairs in a waiting area. A reception desk with a woman behind it who looked like she had answered the same questions 1,000 times. Marcus walked up to the desk. "I'd like to speak with someone about becoming a foster parent," he said. The woman looked up. "Name Marcus Hale." She typed it into her computer. Then she stopped. She looked at the screen. Then she looked at him. "Marcus Hale," she said. "The Marcus Hale I only know one," he said. She picked up the phone and made a call. A few minutes later, a woman came out from a back office. She was about 50 in a dark blazer and reading glasses pushed up on her head. She extended her hand. "Mr. Hale. I'm Mrs. Rodriguez. I supervise placements in this district. Please come in." They sat in her office. It was small and crowded with files. A calendar on the wall was covered in colored sticky notes. A coffee mug on the desk said "World's Okayest Social Worker." Mrs. Rodriguez sat behind her desk and folded her hands. "So," she said, "you want to become a foster parent." "I want to learn about a specific child," Marcus said. "Her name is Zara Williams." Mrs. Rodriguez nodded slowly. "I can't discuss specific cases without a formal relationship to the child, but I can talk to you about the process." "Are you looking to foster or adopt?" "I'm looking to help," Marcus said. Mrs. Rodriguez gave a small smile, not unkind, but knowing. "That's what everyone says at first," she said. "Then they find out how much paperwork is involved, how long it takes, how many classes they have to attend, how many questions they have to answer about their own childhood, their own mental health, their own finances, their own reasons, and most of them decide it's easier to write a check." Marcus looked at her steadily. "I know how the system works," he said. "I was in it." Mrs. Rodriguez stopped. Her hands unfolded. She leaned back slightly in her chair and looked at him differently. Not like a celebrity, not like a billionaire, like a person. "How many homes?" she asked quietly. "5," Marcus said, "before someone finally kept me." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Single men applying to foster are rare. The process will be longer and more scrutinized. There will be a background check, financial review, home study interviews, mandatory training classes, and a court hearing. You will be asked personal questions that most people are not comfortable answering." "I understand," Marcus said. "The system is designed to protect children," she continued. "Sometimes that means protecting them from people with good intentions who aren't ready." Marcus nodded. "I'm not asking to skip the line," he said. "I'm asking to stand in it." Mrs. Rodriguez looked at him for a long time. Then she opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. She placed it on the desk between them. "This is the application," she said. "It's long, it's personal, and it's just the beginning." Marcus took the folder. It was heavier than any contract he had ever signed. That evening, Marcus sat in his home office reading through the foster care application. Every page asked something personal: family history, childhood experiences, reasons for applying, mental health history, relationships, support systems. His phone buzzed. A message from David. "I pulled Zara's school records. Thought you should see this." Marcus opened the attachment. It was a report from Zara's teacher. Grades were above average. Attendance was almost perfect. Behavior notes said she was cooperative but reserved. The word "withdrawn" appeared 3 times. The phrase "emotionally guarded" appeared once. Then Marcus read a single line in the teacher's observation section that made him stop scrolling. "Zara draws houses during free time. Not the house she lives in, houses she imagines." Marcus put the phone down. He closed his eyes for a moment. He drew houses too, when he was her age. Not the houses he lived in, houses he dreamed about. Houses with big kitchens and backyards and rooms with doors that locked from the inside so nobody could come in without asking. He drew those houses in notebook after notebook because drawing them was the only way to live in them, even for a minute. That was how foster children dreamed. Not out loud, not in words, on paper, quietly, where nobody could take the dream away because nobody knew it existed. Marcus opened his eyes and made a decision. He took a piece of paper from his desk, plain white. Not company letterhead, not embossed, just paper. And he picked up a pen, not a keyboard, not a phone, a pen, and he began to write. "Dear Zara, I sat next to you at a bus stop last week. I don't know if you remember me. I was the man with the broken-down car. I noticed you carry a notebook. I used to carry one too. When I was about your age, I drew houses, buildings, places I wanted to build one day. Nobody asked me what I was drawing. I never showed anyone. I don't know what you draw, but I think it matters. Whatever is in that notebook, keep going. Don't stop. Don't let anyone tell you it's just drawing. Sometimes the things we put on paper are the first drafts of the things we build for real. You don't know me, but I wanted you to know that someone noticed. He signed it, just his first name, Marcus. The next morning, he drove to Zara's school. It was a public elementary school in a plain brick building with a flagpole out front and a parking lot full of older cars. Marcus parked and walked inside. The hallway smelled like floor cleaner and cafeteria food. He stopped at the front office and asked to speak with Zara's teacher. The woman at the desk looked at him carefully, the way school staff look at any adult who shows up asking about a specific child. He explained that he was a former foster child himself and that he wanted to send a letter of encouragement to a student. He said the letter could go through the teacher first. He said the teacher could read it before giving it to Zara. He said he understood the precautions. The principal was called. A short conversation happened. Marcus waited in a plastic chair in the hallway while they discussed it. Eventually, the principal came out and said the letter could be delivered through the teacher. Marcus handed over the envelope. It was sealed. His name was not on the outside, only Zara's. He walked back to his car. He sat behind the wheel for a moment before starting the engine. He thought about something Mrs. Odell had said to him 42 years ago at a bus stop in Memphis. Whatever they tell you about yourself, don't believe all of it. Most of it is about them, not you. He had carried that sentence for more than 4 decades. It had lived inside him through 5 foster homes, through years of building a company from nothing, through marriage, through loss, through every boardroom and every negotiation, and every night alone in a house too big for one person. He had never been able to pass that sentence on to anyone. Until now. Zara Williams had never received a letter before. Not a real one. Not one with her name written on the front in ink that someone had actually pressed a pen into paper to write. The last time someone had written her name on anything personal was Mama Grace. A birthday card with a hand-drawn cake on the front. Zara was 5. She still had that card. It lived in the inside pocket of her jacket, folded so many times the creases had turned white. So, when her teacher, Miss Harding, called her to the front of the classroom during morning break and held out a white envelope, Zara did not reach for it right away. "Someone sent this for you," Miss Harding said, through the front office. Zara looked at the envelope. Her name was written on the front. Just her first name, Zara. The handwriting was neat, but not perfect, like someone who typed most of the time but had chosen to use a pen on purpose. She took the envelope and walked out to the schoolyard. She sat in the corner near the fence where she always sat during break. The other children played on the swings and the basketball court. Zara sat on the concrete with her back against the chain link and opened the envelope carefully, pulling the flap without tearing it. She read the letter slowly. Then she read it again. When she finished, she folded it along the same lines it had come in and slid it into the inside pocket of her jacket. The same pocket where Mama Grace's birthday card lived. The pocket where she kept the things that mattered most. The things she would grab first if someone knocked on the door and said, "Pack your things." A girl from her class walked by. "Who wrote you a letter?" she asked. "Someone I met at a bus stop," Zara said. A stranger. Zara thought about that for a moment. "No," she said. "Someone who sat with me." The girl shrugged and walked away. Zara stayed where she was. She put her hand over the pocket where the letter now lived and pressed it flat against her chest. She could feel the paper through the fabric. Thin but there. That evening, at the Brennan house, the other children were watching television in the living room. The volume was loud. Someone was arguing about what channel to put on. Mrs. Brennan was in the kitchen making dinner. The house smelled like canned soup and toast. Zara sat on her bed in the room she shared with another girl. She opened her notebook to a blank page. She picked up her pencil and held it for a moment, thinking. For as long as she could remember, Zara had drawn houses. Houses with big windows. Houses with porches. Houses with yards and trees and mailboxes that had her name on them. She drew them because drawing them was the closest she had ever come to living in one. But tonight, she did not draw a house. She drew a bus stop. A metal bench with peeling paint. A road stretching out to the left and right. Two people sitting on the bench. One tall, one small. Between them, a garbage bag. She drew it carefully. The bench. The shelter with the missing panel. The cracked sidewalk. The man's shoes. Her own shoes. The bag. Mama Grace used to say that God sends people to you at bus stops and grocery stores and waiting rooms, not in churches or fancy places. He sends them where you are already standing. Zara had not thought about that in a long time. But sitting on a bed in a house that was not hers, drawing a bench she had sat on for less than an hour, she thought about it now. She looked at the drawing for a long time. The two figures on the bench, the space between them, the bag in the middle. Then she picked up her pencil again and wrote one word at the bottom of the page. The word was stayed. Because that was what the man at the bus stop had done. He did not fix anything. He did not promise anything. He did not say, I will take care of you, or I will change your life, or everything is going to be okay. He just stayed. And for a girl who had watched people leave 7 times, that one word meant more than any promise ever could. 2 weeks later, Marcus Hale sat in his living room, across from a woman named Mrs. Torres. She was from the Department of Children and Family Services. She had a clipboard, a pen, and a face that said she had done this many times before and was not easily impressed. The home study had begun. Mrs. Torres looked around the room slowly. She noted the size of the house, the number of rooms, the condition of the floors, the windows, the kitchen. She wrote things down without commenting on them. Then she sat down across from Marcus and opened her notebook. Mr. Hale, she said, why do you want to foster a child? Marcus told her about the bus stop, about the girl, about the garbage bag, about the way she spoke, about the way she carried everything she owned in something that was designed to be thrown away. Mrs. Torres listened and wrote. When he finished, she looked up. That's a nice story, she said. But fostering is not a story. It's 3 in the morning wake-ups because a child has a nightmare and doesn't trust you enough to tell you. It's court dates and social worker visits and a child who might look you in the eye and say, I hate you, and you have to stay anyway. She paused. Are you ready for that? I think so, Marcus said. You think so, she repeated. Most people who sit in that chair say they know so. You're the first one today who said think. She wrote something down. Then she asked the question Marcus had been expecting and dreading. Tell me about your own experience in the system. Marcus was quiet for a long time. He looked at the coffee table between them, at the rug beneath it, at the floor beneath the rug, like he was trying to find the bottom of something. Then he spoke. 5 homes, he said. I was placed at age 6 after my mother passed. No father on record. I was returned 4 times. The first family said I was too much work. The second family moved and couldn't take me. The third family had a biological child and decided they didn't want a foster child anymore. The fourth family said I had behavioral problems. Did you, Mrs. Torres asked. I was angry, Marcus said. I didn't know how to say I'm scared, so I said it with my fists. I broke a window once, threw a plate once, but I never hurt anyone. I just didn't know how to be in a place that might disappear. Mrs. Torres wrote quietly. Then she said, and the 5th home. Marcus's voice changed slightly. Not louder, not softer, just different. Like a door opening into a room he rarely entered. A teacher at my school, he said. His name was Mr. Williams. He taught history. He noticed I was drawing buildings in my notebook during class. Instead of taking the notebook away, he asked me what I was building. Marcus paused. Nobody had ever asked me that before. What I was building, like what I was doing on paper, was real. And he fostered you, Mrs. Torres asked. He adopted me, Marcus said, when I was 14. He was single. It took a long time. The system made it hard, but he stayed. And Mr. Williams, he passed away when I was 22, Marcus said. Heart attack. He was 58. He never saw the company. He never saw the buildings I built. The room was quiet for a moment, but the company exists because of him, Marcus said. Every building I've ever put up started in that notebook he didn't take away. Mrs. Torres looked at him for a long time. Then she asked the hardest question. Marcus, she said, do you want to save this girl, or do you want to save yourself at age 10? Marcus did not answer right away. He sat with the question. He let it sit in the room between them like something heavy that needed to be looked at from all sides before anyone touched it. "Maybe both," he said. "And I think that's honest." Mrs. Torres closed her notebook and looked at Marcus for a long moment. Then she said something he did not expect. "Most people who sit in that chair give me perfect answers," she said. "They say all the right things. They've read the books. They've watched the videos. They know what a social worker wants to hear." She paused. "You gave me a real answer. That matters more than you think." The process moved forward after that, but it did not move fast. David called 2 days later with an update. Background check cleared. No issues, but the training program is mandatory. 8 sessions, 2 per week. And the court hearing won't be scheduled until the training is complete. "How long?" Marcus asked. 6 to 8 weeks for the training. Then another 3 to 4 weeks for the hearing. Maybe longer if the judge's schedule is full. That's 3 months. At least David confirmed. "And Marcus, I want to be clear. Even after all of that, there's no guarantee the judge will approve the placement. Single men fostering is still unusual. Some judges are skeptical." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "She's been waiting 11 years, David. A few months won't kill me." But a few days later, David called again. This time his voice was different. Careful. "Marcus, I need to tell you something. The Brennan family is in trouble. Mr. Brennan lost his job 3 weeks ago. They're behind on bills. The agency is reviewing whether they can continue as foster parents." "What does that mean for Zara?" Marcus asked. "If the Brennans can't maintain the requirements, they'll have to give up some or all of their foster children. And Zara was the last one placed there. In the system, last in is usually first out." Marcus stood up from his desk. "Can I help them? Can I pay their bills?" "No," David said firmly. "If you try to influence the placement process with money, it will backfire. The system doesn't care about your net worth, Marcus. In fact, it might work against you." "Why?" "Because judges are suspicious of rich people who suddenly want children they've never met. They've seen it before. People who treat fostering like a charity project. People who want to feel good about themselves for a few months and then return the child when it gets hard." Marcus sat down again. He pressed his hand against his forehead. That evening, Mrs. Patterson brought him dinner. He didn't touch it. "You haven't eaten today," she said. "I'm not hungry." She stood in the doorway and watched him the way she always did when she had something to say. "You know what I think?" she said. "Tell me. I think that little girl scares you." Marcus looked up. "Why would a child scare me?" Mrs. Patterson tilted her head slightly. "Because she reminds you of the part of yourself you tried to forget. The part that sat on benches and carried garbage bags and waited for people who never showed up. You built all of this," she gestured around the room, "so you would never have to think about that boy again. And now here he is, sitting at a bus stop, looking right at you." Marcus did not answer. Mrs. Patterson picked up the untouched plate and walked back to the kitchen. Marcus sat in his office that night staring at the foster care application folder on his desk. He had built his life by controlling outcomes, money, strategy, timing. He knew how to read a deal, how to outmaneuver a competitor, how to close a negotiation in his favor. His entire career was built on the belief that if you planned well enough and worked hard enough, you could determine the result. But this was something money could not speed up. Strategy could not shortcut. Timing was in someone else's hands, a judge, a social worker, a system that moved at its own pace for its own reasons. For the first time in decades, Marcus Hale was not in control, and it terrified him. It happened on a Tuesday morning. The call came from David at 8:15. "The Brennans notified the agency," David said. "They can't continue. Financial hardship. They're releasing all 4 children back to the system." Marcus gripped the phone. "When?" "Today. Social workers are already being dispatched. Zara too, Zara too." Marcus closed his eyes. He saw the garbage bag. He saw the bus stop. He saw the girl's hands gripping the black plastic with the practiced grip of someone who had done this too many times. "Where will she go?" he asked. "I don't know yet," David said. "The agency will find whatever placement is available." Available. That word again. Not good, not safe, not right. Available. At the Brennan house, Linda arrived at 9:30 in the morning. She parked the gray sedan in the same spot she always parked it. She walked up to the front door and knocked the way she always knocked. 2 soft knocks. Then she waited. Mrs. Brennan opened the door. Her eyes were red. She had been crying. Not in front of the children. In the bathroom with the water running so they couldn't hear. "I'm sorry, Mrs." Brennan said. "We tried." "I know you did," Linda said. Zara was already in the bedroom she shared with the other girl. She was packing. She didn't need to be told. She had heard Mrs. Brennan on the phone the night before. She had heard the words, "can't anymore," and "I'm so sorry and we just don't have the money." She knew what those words meant. She had heard them before. The garbage bag was open on the bed. Zara packed her things quickly. She had done this 8 times now. She knew the order. Toothbrush first, then socks, then the book from Mrs. Johnson, then everything else. But before any of that, she reached into the pocket of her jacket and took out 2 things. The birthday card from Mama Grace and the letter from Marcus. She held them both for a moment. Then she put them back in the pocket and zipped it shut. Those 2 things would stay on her body. Not in the bag, on her. The notebook went in last. She wrapped it in an old t-shirt so the pages wouldn't bend. Then she tied the bag at the top and lifted it off the bed. 30 minutes. Start to finish. She was getting faster. Linda was waiting at the front door. "Ready?" she asked. Zara nodded. They walked to the car. Linda opened the back door. Zara put the bag on the seat and climbed in beside it. She pulled the seatbelt across her chest. She had done this motion so many times that her body did it without thinking. Bag on seat, climb in, seatbelt. Linda started the car. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Then Linda spoke. "I'm sorry, Zara." Zara looked out the window. "It's not your fault," she said. "I know," Linda said, "but I'm still sorry." It was a small moment. A quiet exchange between 2 people who both understood that the system was bigger than either of them and that sometimes being sorry was the only honest thing left to say. The car turned onto the main road. They passed the gas station. They passed the grocery store. They passed the school Zara had been going to for the last 3 weeks. And then they passed the bus stop. Zara turned her head. She looked at the metal bench through the car window. The bench was empty. No one was sitting there. No man in a gray vest. No broken-down car with hazard lights blinking. Just an empty bench at the side of the road. She looked at it until the car turned a corner and she couldn't see it anymore. Mama Grace said people are like trees. Some have deep roots and stay forever. Some are just passing through like leaves. But even the leaves keep you warm for a while. That evening Zara was placed in a group home called Horizon House. It was a low brick building on a quiet street. Inside there was a long hallway with rooms on both sides. Each room had 2 beds. There was a shared bathroom at the end of the hall. A schedule was posted on the wall near the front desk. Wake up at 7. Breakfast at 7:30. Lights out at 9. A staff member showed Zara to her room. Bed number 9, a thin mattress on a metal frame, a small nightstand with 1 drawer, a window that looked out onto a parking lot. Zara put her garbage bag under the bed. She sat down on the mattress. It made a sound when she sat, the creak of old springs under thin padding. She didn't unpack. She wouldn't unpack. She had learned that lesson a long time ago. She lay down on the bed and stared at the ceiling for a while. The ceiling was white with a small crack running from the light fixture to the corner of the room. She traced the crack with her eyes the way she used to trace roads on maps when she was younger, imagining where they might lead. Then she reached under the bed and pulled the notebook out of the garbage bag. She unwrapped it from the t-shirt and opened it to a new page. She did not draw a house. She drew a bus stop, an empty bench. No people this time, just the bench, the road, the fading paint, the missing panel on the shelter, and underneath the drawing she wrote 5 words. He said, "Don't stop drawing." She closed the notebook and held it against her chest for a moment. Then she slid it under her pillow and closed her eyes. She did not sleep for a long time, but she did not cry either. She had stopped crying after home number 4. Crying didn't change anything, it just made the pillow wet. So she lay there in bed, number 9, in a room she had never been in before, in a building full of children she had never met, holding a notebook under her pillow like it was the only thing in the world that belonged to her. Because it was. The next morning, David called Marcus at 7. "She's been moved," David said. "The Brennans couldn't keep her. She's in a group home now." Marcus was standing in his kitchen. He set his coffee cup down on the counter. slowly, carefully, like he was trying very hard not to break something. "Which one?" he asked. "Horizon House," David said. "It's a temporary placement facility on the east side." "Temporary," Marcus repeated. "Everything in her life is temporary." David was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The hearing is still 2 weeks out. There's nothing we can speed up, Marcus. If you show up at a group home unannounced asking about a specific child, it looks wrong. It raises flags. We have to go through the proper channels." "I know," Marcus said. "The best thing you can do right now is finish the training and wait for the hearing." "I know," Marcus said again, but the word wait felt like holding his breath underwater. After he hung up, Marcus stood in the kitchen for a long time. He looked around at the marble countertops, the stainless steel appliances, the breakfast nook with the window that looked out over the backyard, a house built for a family that never came. He picked up his phone again and dialed Mrs. Rodriguez. "Mrs. Rodriguez," he said when she answered. "This is Marcus Hale. I understand Zara Williams has been moved to Horizon House." "That's correct," Mrs. Rodriguez said carefully. "Can I see her?" "Not yet. Not until the court approves a formal relationship." "You know this, Mr. Hale. Can I at least send her something? A letter?" There was a pause. "A letter can go through the agency. We can review it and pass it along." "Thank you," Marcus said. He hung up and sat down at his desk. He took out a piece of paper, the same plain white paper he had used before, and he began to write. "Dear Zara, I heard you moved again. I know how that feels. When I was your age, I moved 5 times. Every time I thought I would never stop moving. I thought moving was just what people like me did, like it was part of who I was. But I did stop. One day, someone decided I was worth staying for. It took a long time. It took longer than it should have, but it happened. I want you to know something. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here when you're ready. However long that takes. Don't stop drawing. Marcus." He sealed the envelope. He wrote her name on the front, carefully. Each letter placed with the kind of attention he usually reserved for contracts worth millions of dollars. But this was not a contract. This was something else. This was a man writing a name on an envelope like it was the most important word he had written in his entire life. Because it was. The courtroom was small. Not the kind of courtroom you see in movies. No jury box. No gallery of spectators. Just a wood-paneled room with fluorescent lights, a raised bench for the judge, 2 tables, and a few rows of chairs behind a low railing. Family court. The kind of room where the decisions weigh more than anything decided in a boardroom, but the furniture costs less than a single chair in Marcus Hale's office. Marcus sat at the table on the left side of the room. David sat beside him. Marcus wore a dark vest over a white shirt, no tie. David had told him that morning, "You want to look serious, not corporate. There's a difference in this room." Mrs. Rodriguez sat in the second row behind them. Mrs. Torres sat beside her holding a folder with her home study report inside. Linda, the social worker, sat at the end of the same row. She had come on her day off, and in the back of the room on a chair near the door sat Zara. She was next to a court-appointed counselor, a woman Zara had met twice. Zara sat very still with her hands in her lap. She wore the same jacket she always wore, the one with the zipper pull replaced by a paperclip. The pocket was zipped shut. The letters were inside. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Her nameplate read Judge Eleanor Williams. Marcus saw the name and felt something move through him. Williams. The same last name as Mr. Williams. The teacher who had adopted him. The man who had changed his life. Marcus knew it was a coincidence, but some coincidences feel like they are trying to tell you something. Judge Williams sat down and opened the file in front of her. She read for a moment. Then she looked at Marcus. "Mr. Hale," she said, "you are petitioning to become the foster parent of Zara Williams with the intent to adopt." "Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus said. "I've reviewed the home study, the background check, the training records, and the recommendations from the Department of Children and Family Services." She paused. "Everything appears to be in order. But I have questions." "Of course," Marcus said. "Why do you want to foster this child?" Marcus looked at the judge. He did not look at his hands. He did not look at the table. He looked directly at her eyes. "Because I met her at a bus stop," he said. "She was sitting on a bench with a garbage bag. Everything she owned was inside it. and I recognized that bag because I carried one just like it when I was her age. Judge Williams listened without writing. I was in the foster care system for 8 years, Marcus continued. 5 homes. I was returned 4 times. I carried my life in a garbage bag from house to house, and nobody ever asked me if I was okay. Nobody ever asked me what I was drawing in my notebook. Nobody ever came looking for me. He paused. I built a company. I built buildings. I built a life that looks from the outside like everything worked out. But I spent 42 years avoiding the part of myself that sat on that bench. And then I met a girl who was sitting in the exact same place I had been. And I realized that running from that bench didn't make it disappear. It just meant nobody was sitting there when the next kid showed up. The courtroom was quiet. Judge Williams looked at her file again. Mr. Hale, do you understand that this child has been rejected 8 times? Yes, Your Honor. Do you understand what that does to a person? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Yes, Your Honor. I do. Because I was room number 9 once. He did not know that Zara's bed at Horizon House was number 9. He could not have known that. But the words landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water, and the silence after them was the kind of silence where people stop breathing for a moment because something true has just been said. Judge Williams looked at Marcus for a long time. Then she turned to Mrs. Rodriguez. Mrs. Rodriguez, does the department support this placement? Mrs. Rodriguez stood. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Hale completed all required training. His home study was approved. His background is clear. And in my professional opinion, his personal history gives him an understanding of this child's experience that most applicants simply do not have. Mrs. Torres, the judge continued. Your assessment. Mrs. Torres stood. I conducted the home study personally, she said. Mr. Hale's home is stable, safe, and more than adequate. But what stood out to me was not the house. It was the honesty. When I asked him if he wanted to save this girl or save himself, he said maybe both. That was the most real answer I have heard in 15 years of doing this work. Judge Williams nodded slowly. Then she looked at Linda. Miss Delgado, you are Zara's caseworker. Do you have anything to add? Linda stood. She smoothed her blazer. She looked tired the way she always looked, but her voice was steady. Your Honor, I have been a social worker for 12 years. I have processed hundreds of placements. I have seen people come into this system with good intentions and leave when it gets hard. I have seen people write checks and call it helping. She paused. In all my years, I have never seen an applicant write 2 handwritten letters to a child they met once at a bus stop. Not emails, not texts, letters. On paper, with a pen. Both of them are in that little girl's jacket pocket right now because she carries them everywhere she goes. The room was quiet again. Judge Williams looked toward the back of the courtroom. At Zara. Zara sat very still. Her hands were in her lap. Her eyes moved from Linda to Marcus and stayed there. Marcus turned slightly in his chair. He looked at Zara. He did not smile. He did not wave. He did not try to perform anything. He just looked at her the way one person looks at another when words are not enough and both of them know it. Zara held his gaze. Then, very slowly, almost invisibly, she nodded. One small movement of her head, so slight that if you blinked, you would have missed it. But Marcus did not blink, and he saw it. Judge Williams saw it too. She looked down at her file one more time. Then she closed it. I've seen a lot of cases in this courtroom, she said. I've seen a lot of promises, a lot of good intentions, a lot of people who want to help until helping becomes inconvenient. She looked at Marcus. But I have rarely seen someone who understands what this child needs because they once needed the same thing. She picked up her pen. I am approving the foster to adopt placement of Zara Williams with Marcus Hale, effective immediately, subject to standard review periods. Mr. Hale, this child has been waiting a long time. Do not make her wait any longer. I won't, Your Honor, Marcus said. The gavel came down once. A small sound, but it echoed. 3 days later, Marcus pulled his car up to the Department of Children and Family Services. He parked near the front entrance and turned off the engine. He sat for a moment, both hands on the steering wheel, looking at the building. Then he got out and walked inside. Zara was waiting in the reception area. She was sitting in a plastic chair with her garbage bag on the floor beside her. The same bag, the same black plastic, the same careful knot at the top. A staff member walked her to the door. "She's all yours, Mr. Hale," the woman said. She meant it kindly. But Marcus noticed that the words sounded like a transaction, like handing over a package. He looked at Zara. She looked at him. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Marcus looked down at the garbage bag. "After today," he said, "you won't need that anymore." Zara picked up the bag. She held it against her body with both arms. "I'll keep it," she said, "just in case." Marcus nodded. He understood. He didn't push. He didn't try to take it from her. He didn't say everything is going to be different now, or you're safe, or any of the things people say when they want to believe something is fixed before it actually is. He just said, "Okay." They walked to the car. Marcus opened the back door. Zara put the garbage bag on the seat. Then she climbed in beside it. Seatbelt, bag, the same routine. They drove in silence for most of the ride. Zara looked out the window. She watched the streets change from commercial to residential, from small houses to larger ones, from chain-link fences to stone walls and tall trees. When the car turned onto the long driveway that led to Marcus's house, Zara leaned forward slightly. The house appeared through the trees, large, stone and glass. The oak trees lining the driveway. The front door, solid wood. "This is where you live?" she asked. "This is where we live," Marcus said. The front door opened before they reached it. Mrs. Patterson stood in the doorway wearing her usual apron, her hands folded in front of her. "So you're Zara," she said. Zara looked up at her. "Yes, ma'am. I've heard a lot about you." "From who?" Zara asked. Mrs. Patterson smiled gently. "From a man who hasn't talked about anything else for 2 months." They went inside. Zara walked slowly through the house. She looked at the high ceilings, the wide hallway, the living room with the tall windows. She did not touch anything. She walked the way someone walks through a museum. Looking. Not belonging. Not yet. They reached a door at the end of a hallway on the second floor. Marcus stopped. "Which room is mine?" Zara asked. Marcus opened the door. The room was not the biggest in the house, but it was prepared. A bed with clean white sheets and a soft blue blanket. A nightstand with a small lamp. A bookshelf half filled with books chosen for her age. A desk near the window with a view of the backyard and the oak trees. And on the desk, a wooden box. Open. Inside were colored pencils, drawing pens, watercolor brushes, and a brand new sketchbook with a leather cover. Zara walked to the desk. She looked at the box. She touched the pencils lightly the way someone touches something they are afraid might disappear. Then she looked at Marcus. "You remembered," she said. "I remembered," he replied. Zara stood in the room for a long time. She looked at the bed, the bookshelf, the window, the desk, the drawing supplies, the clean floor, the door that had a lock on the inside. Then she set the garbage bag down on the floor. She did not put it under the bed. She did not hide it. She just set it on the floor near the closet like something she wasn't ready to let go of but didn't need to hold anymore. She sat down on the edge of the bed, slowly, carefully. The way someone sits on something they think might not be real. She pressed her hands into the mattress and felt it hold her weight. She looked at Marcus one more time. She didn't say thank you. She didn't say this is amazing. She just looked at him with the expression of someone who wanted to believe but had been taught too many times that believing was the part that hurt the most. Marcus understood that look. He had worn it himself at age 14, standing in Mr. Williams's house for the first time, wondering how long it would last. "I'll be downstairs," he said. "Take your time." He closed the door gently behind him. That night, for the first time in a very long time, Zara did not sleep with her shoes on. In every foster home she had slept with her shoes on, laces tied, double knotted, because you never knew when someone would knock on the door and say, "Pack your things." You never knew when 30 minutes would start. But tonight she sat on the edge of the bed and looked at her shoes for a long time. Then she untied the laces, slowly, one shoe, then the other. She placed them neatly beside the bed, side by side, toes pointing forward. She lay down. She pulled the blanket up to her chin. She looked at the ceiling. It was smooth and white, no cracks, and she slept. 6 months passed, and the house changed. Not the walls, not the floors, not the furniture. The house itself looked exactly the same as it had before Zara arrived, but it sounded different, it felt different, it breathed differently. There were footsteps now. Not just Marcus's slow, heavy steps moving from the office to the kitchen and back. There were quick, lighter steps on the staircase. There was the sound of a pencil moving across paper in the evening. There was the occasional sound of a cabinet opening and closing in the kitchen at odd hours because Zara still sometimes got up at night to check that the food was still there. She called him Mr. Marcus. Not Dad, not Father. Mr. Marcus. And Marcus never corrected her. He understood that names were earned, not assigned, and that some names took longer than others. At school, things shifted. Her grades, which had always been decent despite everything, began to rise. Her teacher sent a note home that said Zara is more engaged in class. She raised her hand twice this week. For a girl who had been described as withdrawn for years, raising her hand twice was a revolution. She made a friend. A girl named Lily, who sat next to her in art class. Lily drew animals. Zara drew buildings. They didn't talk much during class. They just drew side by side and sometimes held up their notebooks to show each other what they had made. It was the quietest friendship in the school, and it was the first real one Zara had ever had. Marcus changed too. He started leaving the office earlier. He rescheduled meetings that fell during dinner time. He went to the school art show and stood in a gymnasium with fluorescent lights and paper streamers and looked at Zara's drawing hanging on the wall between a crayon dinosaur and a finger painting of a sunset. He was the only person there in a vest. He was also the only person there who had never attended a school event for a child before. He stood in the back and watched Zara walk her teacher through her drawing, explaining something about the shadows on the building she had drawn, and he realized that this was the most important meeting he had attended all year. One evening, Mrs. Patterson set the table for dinner. She placed 2 plates instead of 1. She looked at the table and said something to Marcus as he walked in. "This house used to sound like a museum," she said. "Now it sounds like a home." "What's the difference?" Marcus asked. Mrs. Patterson smiled. "A museum has things in it. A home has someone running down the hallway." After dinner that evening, Zara came to Marcus in his office. She was holding her notebook, the same notebook she had carried at the bus stop. It was fuller now. The pages were thick with drawings, some in pencil, some in the colored pens from the wooden box. "I drew something for you," she said. Marcus put down his phone. He turned his chair to face her completely. She opened the notebook to the last page and held it out to him. It was a drawing of a house. Not an imaginary house, not a house from a dream. It was this house, Marcus's house, drawn in careful detail, the stone walls, the oak trees, the front door with the heavy wood, the windows, the driveway that curved toward the road, and in front of the house 2 figures, one tall, one small, standing side by side. Underneath the drawing in her careful handwriting, Zara had written one sentence. "This is the first house I didn't have to imagine." Marcus looked at the drawing. He looked at it for a very long time. He did not speak. He did not need to. Some moments are too full for words, and this was one of them. Then he said very quietly, "Thank you for drawing us a home." Marcus Hale had built hundreds of buildings in his life. Apartment towers that touched the skyline, shopping centers that filled entire city blocks, office complexes where thousands of people went to work every morning. He had seen his name on plaques and in newspapers and on the sides of construction fences, but none of those buildings had ever been called a home. Until a girl with a notebook drew one for him. A week later, Marcus Hale did something he had been thinking about for a long time. He drove back to the bus stop on Route 12. He parked on the side of the road and walked to the metal bench with the peeling green paint, the bench where he had sat with Zara, the bench where everything began. He sat down. The metal was warm from the afternoon sun. The road was quiet. A bus passed, then another. Marcus watched them go the way he had watched them go as a boy in Memphis 42 years ago. He took out his phone and called Mrs. Rodriguez. "Mrs. Rodriguez," he said, "I want to do something. And I want your help." "What is it?" she asked. "I want to sponsor a program," he said. "Not just a check. I want to build something. I want every child who enters the foster care system in this state to receive real luggage, not garbage bags, a suitcase, with their name on it." Mrs. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. "A suitcase," she repeated. "With their name on it," Marcus said again. "Because no child should carry their life in something that was designed to be thrown away." There was a long pause. Mr. Hale, Mrs. Rodriguez said, "Do you know how many children enter the system in this state every year?" "I do," Marcus said. "And I've already run the numbers." "Of course you have," she said. And for the first time, Marcus heard her smile through the phone. This story reminds us that the most important things in life are not built with money. They are built with presence. A sandwich from a stranger at a bus stop in Memphis, a letter written with a pen instead of typed on a screen, a decision to sit on a bench when everyone else walks past. Every foster child carrying a garbage bag is carrying a question. The question is simple, and it is the same every time. Is anyone going to stay? And the answer to that question changes everything. Mama Grace once told Zara that God sends people at bus stops and grocery stores and waiting rooms, not in churches or fancy places. He sends them where you are already standing. She was right, but what Mama Grace didn't say was this: sometimes the person God sends is also the person who needed saving. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. However, the foster care crisis is real. Over 400,000 children are currently in the foster care system in the United States. Many of them carry their belongings in garbage bags. If this story moved, you consider learning more about how to support foster children in your community. Organizations like Together We Rise and Comfort Cases are working every day to bring dignity to children in the system, because every child deserves a suitcase with their name on it.